3, 2, 1.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Empathy Tale. This is your host, Victoria Wolders, and I am so excited to bring you our new style in 2020. So for the last, 53 episodes, I have been really working hard at recording my stories for Sarah and James. And then what I do is I upload them to a transcript website called Temi. I then download them and then I edit them and then I re-record them. And so it's taken me a lot of time to do that editing process. And I've kind of come to a point now where I've started to realize that I would really like to have my own kids as part of these recordings. So for 2020, we're going vulnerability style. And I am actually going to be uploading the authentic, original recordings. So these are the recordings that I've done with Sarah and James. And so you'll hear them. Sometimes you might hear my husband. You might hear a few yawns in there. There definitely will be some glitches, and you probably all hear some parent fails in there too, where I might interrupt Sarah and James a couple times. But this is just who I am. And I thought it would be a really wonderful part of the Empathy Tales series to have authentic recordings, and then you get to hear Sarah and James's voice. Sarah tends to be a little quieter, but James is in there and he's adding some information into the stories. And so I hope that you enjoy this new approach to the new year, 2020, and moving forward. I'm so excited to share with you these stories, and I'm excited for you to hear the voices of my kids. And the stories are all created just out of my head. A lot of them come from things that I've heard or experienced or felt over the last week or the couple days before I told the story. And as mentioned to you earlier, it's all about empathy. It's about mindfulness. It's about compassion. It's about sharing stories with my own kids as well as my students about what it means to perspective take, what it means to be mindful in the way we interact with human beings and other people. And it's the ability to be able to take, emotions and feelings that kids and humans, we all kind of experience, and trying to put them into the Okanagan Kingdom. So I hope that you enjoy this new approach to 2020. I know I've really enjoyed it, just listening to them and editing them. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. This is Victoria Wolders, and you can connect with me at mykidslocker.com. I'm also on all the social media outlets. You can follow me, subscribe to me, post, pin, retweet. Just connect with me. I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear your input on my Empathy Tales. So we are now going to move on to an episode called the Cala Lillies. And this story actually came out from a coworker I was working with. This coworker that I currently work with, and I was working with last year, is just such a beautiful person, and I just really appreciate her compassion and her empathy, and I appreciate how she continues to share just love with other people. So this is a shout out to Lori Lip, that this story was created for you. And yeah, I just really appreciate what she does for our community at school, and what she does for me and for our children at school. So a little bit of a debrief. This story was shared on July 2nd, 2019. This story is about a beautiful fairy named Cala, and she's trapped in a dungeon. And so we're going to learn about her and how she overcomes that struggle. And the quote today is, "These tears have brought you hope. There has been so much pain and hurt, yet something beautiful came out of it." And I hope that today that you enjoyed this story about Cala, and I hope today that it resonates with you about compassion and empathy, and I hope that you, too, will create compassion one story at a time. If you are comfortable, then we will begin. Okay, so we are at episode 54. The Cala Lilly. Okay, and we're on July 2nd, 2019. I'm here with James, and I'm going to tell you the story, the Cala Lilly. So once upon a time, a long time ago, in the Oak and Eagle Kingdom, in the land of the Eastern Eagle, there was the fairy forest. And the fairy forest was very magical. The fairies would fly around and their wings would look like beautiful butterflies. They were absolutely amazing. Well, one day there was a fairy and her name was Cala. And she was always known to be extremely beautiful. She always used this beautiful white flowing dress, and her wings were translucent and beautifully shimmery, and her hair was white and would go all the way down to her feet, and her eyes were crystal blue, and she was the most beautiful fairy in all of the magical forest. And this beautiful fairy named Cala was known among all of the Oak and Eagle Kingdom as someone who possessed healing powers. When she was very young, whenever she saw someone crying, she would go up to them, she would catch their tear in her hand, she would move her hand back and forth, and eventually a seed would form, and she would plant that seed in her garden. And what would happen is whatever that person was feeling, whether it was tears of joy or tears of sadness or tears of pain, that the garden had different types of flowers. So for example, if it was tears of pain, beautiful roses would form, and depending on who was crying, if it was a fairy who was a red like a rose, it would turn into a red rose with thorns because they were crying in pain. If it was a fairy who was being very joyful and very happy, she would take the tear and create it into a seed and plant it, and often tulips would show, or beautiful gerbera flowers would show, they were just absolutely beautiful. If there were tears of sadness, then often what would happen is they would she'd take the tear and turn it into a seed, and she would plant the tear. And often what would happen would be beautiful bushes would show up with different types of beautiful flowers, or rhododendron plants would show up. So depending on the type of sadness, whether it was mourning or grief, or whether it was hurt or pain, different types of flowers would come and evolve from these beautiful seeds that were once teardrops. The only thing is that Cala herself was never known to cry. She had never known what it was to shed a tear, and she didn't understand why people cried, why people had tears of joy, why people had tears of happiness, why people had tears of pain, or even tears of anger. She didn't understand that, but she did know she had a magical power of being able to capture those tears, turn them into seeds, and a beautiful garden would grow. Well, one day, the Water Troll King had heard of her beautiful talents and her exquisite
ability to create gardens. And he went to her home and knocked on the door. She opened, and she was in her beautiful, beautiful white dress with her beautiful translucent wings. And she looked so elegant with her beautiful hair all the way down to her feet. And her complexion was so white and pure. And her eyes were this beautiful, clear blue, like the sky that you would see in the summer. And the water troll king was mesmerized by her. He said, "I would like you to teach me your power." And she says, "I don't know what you mean." He's like, "I want to grow plants and flowers down in the water troll kingdom. I want to have a beautiful garden like your beautiful garden, and I want to be able to turn tears into seeds, because many of my trolls are in the darkness, and I want them to see what it means to turn tears into seeds." She says, "It's my power. I can't give that to you. I can't teach it to you. I was born this way." Well, the water troll king, because of his history and his background, he started to become angry. He didn't know how to handle his pain. He knew that his people under the ground were in darkness, and they needed to have the joy that she had. And he became very angry at her. The pain that was in his heart and the ache he had for his people came out as anger and pain. And he raised his voice, and he talked cruelly to her and said that she must come with him. She proceeded to say no and walk away. And as she slowly closed the door, the water troll king put his foot in the door and said, "If you don't come with me, I'm going to take you." She screamed, and he grabbed her, and he kidnapped her and put her in one of his big potato sacks. And he dragged her over his shoulder and walked away right through her garden. As he walked through the garden, he stepped on the beautiful seeds and the tears that were now these beautiful, elegant flowers that had a testimony and a legacy of the people who brought the seeds to the garden. And as he walked through the village, most people thought that it was just a potato sack he had, but it was of the beautiful Cala. And as they descended through a tree down to the water troll kingdom, he realized that he had taken one of the most precious things of all the Oak and Eagle kingdom. But it was too late. His anger had gotten the most of him. He had chosen to take something so precious. And as he brought her down deep, deep, deep into the dark caverns of the water troll kingdom, he threw her in a dungeon. It was dark. It was damp. There were black rats around, bats, as well as spiders. It was cold and damp, and there she was in the corner with no light, in her beautiful white dress, elegant, and her beautiful white hair that was all over her, all over the ground, and was becoming the dirt and the mining that's been going on. As she lay there in the dark, she did not know what to do. She cried out, and she said, Water Troll King, come save me." And just at that moment, a tear fell from her eye. As it fell onto the cold, damp, dark floor of the dungeon in the Water Troll Kingdom. And as that tear fell, she picked it up and she spun it around in her hand. As she did that, a beautiful seed formed, and she dropped the seed in the corner of the dungeon. And as she continued to weep, she continued to take those seeds. She did not know what the seeds would bring. Would they bring roses? Would they bring gerbras? Would they bring rhododendrons? What would they bring? She had so many feelings in her mind that she did not know what to bring. Over the next week, she got fed a little bit by the trolls who threw her food, and she continued to cry. After a week, the Water Troll King came to her dungeon. As he came with the light, he slowly opened the dungeon door, and as his light went in, he saw all these beautiful, elegant lilies that stood on the corners of the dungeon. In the midst of the darkness and the dampness, these Cala Lillies had survived, and she was amazed by the beauty, the fact that there had been so much pain and hurt but yet something beautiful could come out of it. She looked at him with her eyes full of tears, her hair dirty, her beautiful white dress that once glistened now was dull with dirt and was very dirty from all the soil and the dungeon dampness. He looked at her and said, "These calla lilies are beautiful." He said, "I have never cried tears, but yet these tears have brought you life." The water troll king said, "I have made a mistake. My anger has gotten the best of me. Would you forgive me?" She looked at him and said, "Yes, I will." And just at that moment, many more tears fell down her face, and she took those tears and made them into seeds with her beautiful hand, and she dropped them at his feet. She said, "This dungeon is now full of calla lilies. These calla lilies will be a reminder to you to remember to calm yourself from the anger and the pain that is hurting you inside. It was only I that bumped you, that made that pain and anger explode and made you kidnap me. I have been in pain, but yet these tears have brought you hope. May I leave?" And the water troll king said, "Your calla lilies will always be in evidence of your forgiveness to me. Our people down here in the water troll kingdom will appreciate these calla lilies because they are so beautiful and they're so elegant. I am grateful for your forgiveness, and I will honor you always." And at that moment, the water troll king took her hand and led her to the up the stairs to the land of the Oak and Eagle Kingdom. As she stood at the top of the Oak and Eagle Kingdom and looked at the ladder with the water troll king down below, he started to cry, and his teardrops started to fall. She said to him, "The hand that you held my hand with, take it now. Take your tears and hold them tight. Plant them by the calla lilies, and you too will." Just remember that we always want to celebrate people's gifts, and that when we celebrate people's gifts, we need to remember that it needs to be treasured, not put in through the eyes and perspectives of jealousy and hatred and envy. Because when envy happens, then hurt and pain can come into the world, and that can cause sorrow and angst and agony. The water troll king took his tears and he turned them into seeds, and he said, "Thank you for your forgiveness." And he slowly walked away to plant his new seeds. The end. That was called the Cala Lily. Any more things to add?
No.
Okay. We're signing off. Another empathy tale. This is Victoria Wolders and
James Flores.
hoping you enjoyed the empathy.
Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Well, not really Merry Christmas. We're halfway to Christmas. Okay, signing off.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today for the story of the Cala Lillies, and I hope that you came away from the story learning a little bit more about a beautiful person. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to another empathy tale. This is Victoria Wolders, your host. If you are interested, feel free to connect with me at mykidslocker.com. Love for you to connect with me on my social media outlets. I'm basically on all of them. And until next time, boys and girls and parents and teachers, I hope that today and in the weeks ahead and months ahead, that you too will create compassion one story at a time. And as we start this brand new year in 2020, I know that we all have wonderful hopes and dreams and aspirations for the next year. And I hope that compassion and empathy and mindfulness are on your list there. And if not, then perhaps consider taking one of those and going and taking it and walking with it on your journey for 2020. Well, until next time, Thank you so much for joining us. This is Victoria Wolders, and we'll see you next week for another Empathy Tale episode. Thank you.
3, 2, 1.